My stepfather shoved me, screaming my seat belonged to his real daughter. Humiliated, I left silently. He didn't know I held the family fortune's keys. When he woke up, he had 47 missed calls and a bankruptcy notice. I am Logan, 32 years old, and my mother's new husband physically pushed me out of my chair at Christmas dinner because I wasn't his blood. Before I tell you about the 47 missed calls, he woke up to the next morning and the absolute destruction of his fake empire. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments down below. I love reading about where you all are from. You know that feeling when you walk into a place that used to be home, but the air just feels different, heavier? That's what hit me the moment I pulled my 10-year-old sedan into the driveway of the estate my father built. It was Christmas Eve. The house was lit up like a showcase in a luxury magazine. Tasteful white lights, wreaths on every window, the whole 9 yards. But in the driveway, my beat-up car looked like a stain on a silk sheet. Parked right in the center, demanding attention, was a brand-new, phantom black Rolls-Royce Phantom. Next to it was my mother's Porsche Cayenne. I sat in my car for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. I didn't want to go in there. I really didn't. Since my dad passed away 10 years ago, that house had transformed from a home into a museum dedicated to Marcus Sterling. That's my stepfather, or as he likes to be called, the CEO. I took a breath, grabbed the modest bottle of wine I could afford, and walked to the front door. I didn't even have to knock. The door swung open, and the noise hit me. Laughter, clinking glasses, the smell of expensive pine candles masking the scent of stale liquor. There were about 20 people inside. A mix of distant relatives and Marcus's business associates. People who wore suits that cost more than my annual rent. "Logan," my mother said. She didn't hug me. She stood there, holding a crystal flute of champagne, looking me up and down. "You wore that." I looked down at my sweater. It was clean. It was decent. "It's a Christmas dinner, Mom. Not a gala." "It's about presentation, Logan," she sighed, shaking her head. "Marcus has important partners here. Try not to embarrass us." That was the greeting. Not "Merry Christmas." Not "How are you?" Just, "Don't embarrass us." I made my way to the dining room. Marcus was there, holding court at the head of the table. He was a big man, 58, with silver hair and a tan that looked too orange to be natural. He was wearing a velvet tuxedo jacket. He saw me, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, the IT guy has arrived," Marcus announced, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Fix any printers lately, Logan?" A few of his associates chuckled. My Uncle Ted, who was already 3 drinks deep and recording everything on his phone for his 12 followers on Facebook, laughed the loudest. "I work in cybersecurity, Marcus," I said, keeping my voice even. "We protect bank infrastructures." "Computers," Marcus dismissed with a wave of his hand, pouring himself another glass of scotch. "Small thinking. You need vision, Logan. Like Preston. Well, like my Brittany. She's got vision." Brittany, his daughter, my stepsister, the golden child. "Where is Brittany?" I asked, noticing the empty chair at the other end of the table. "She's on her way," Marcus beamed. "Closing a deal. Big things happening." We sat down for dinner. The tension was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. I was seated at the far end of the table, the spot usually reserved for the least important guest. But today, the seating arrangement was different. There were only 2 chairs at the heads of the table. Marcus took one. The other, facing him, was empty. We started eating. Marcus spent the first 20 minutes bragging about the new logistics contract he'd secured for the company. The company my father built. The company Marcus took over because I was too young, and my mother was too grief-stricken to manage it. "We're talking 8 figures, Marcus boomed. "That Rolls-Royce outside? Just a signing bonus for myself. You have to treat yourself, right?" "Absolutely," a man named Carl agreed. "You've turned the ship around, Marcus." I chewed my roast beef, tasting nothing but ash. They had no idea. They didn't know the numbers I knew. But I kept my mouth shut. I was just trying to get through the night. Then we heard the roar. It wasn't a normal engine sound. It was the high-pitched scream of a V10 engine. We saw the headlights sweep across the dining room window. "She's here." Marcus clapped his hands. The front door burst open. Brittany walked in. She's 25, wearing a dress that was probably worth $5,000 and carrying half a dozen shopping bags. She didn't look like she had been closing a business deal. She looked like she had been raiding a mall. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic was a nightmare, and the new Lambo is a beast to park. A Lamborghini Huracan. Yellow. I saw it through the window as she left the door open. Another car bought with company money. She dropped her bags on the sofa and strutted into the dining room. She scanned the table. Her eyes landed on me. I was sitting in the chair to the right of Marcus. It wasn't the head of the table, but it was close. "You're in my seat," Brittany said. I looked up. "There are plenty of chairs, Brittany." "I want that one," she said, pointing a manicured finger. "Lighting is better for my story." "Brittany, please," I said, tired. "I'm eating." She looked at her dad. "Daddy." Marcus slammed his glass down. The sound echoed in the room. The chatter stopped. Uncle Ted panned his phone camera toward us. "Logan," Marcus growled. "Move." "For a selfie?" I asked, incredulous. "Marcus, come on." "It's not about the selfie," Marcus said, his face turning red. The alcohol was talking now. "It's about respect. It's about hierarchy." "I'm sitting here," I said, quietly but firmly. "I'm not moving." Marcus stood up. He was a big guy, imposing. He walked over to where I was sitting. My mother looked down at her plate, swirling her fork in her mashed potatoes. She saw everything. She did nothing. I said, "Move," Marcus hissed. "No," I said. Then he did it. He grabbed the back of my chair and yanked it. Hard. I wasn't expecting it. My center of gravity shifted. The chair tipped backward. I tried to grab the table edge, but my hand slipped. I went down. Hard. I hit the floor with a thud that shook my teeth. The chair clattered on top of me. My plate of food slid off the table, and warm cranberry sauce splattered all over my chest and neck. Silence. Absolute silence in the room. I lay there for a second, stunned. My hip throbbed. The humiliation burned hotter than the sauce on my skin. "Oops," Brittany giggled. "Sorry, stepbro." I looked up. Marcus was standing over me, breathing heavy, his face twisted in a sneer. "This seat," Marcus spat, pointing at the empty space, "is for my real daughter, for my blood. You're just a leech, a relic of the past. Get out." I looked at my mother. Surely this was the line. Surely, seeing her son on the floor, covered in food, pushed by her husband, would wake her up. She looked at me. Her eyes were cold, empty. "You're ruining the evening, Logan," she whispered. "Just go." That was the moment. That exact second. Something inside me snapped. Not in a violent way. It wasn't a hot rage. It was cold. It was absolute zero. I didn't yell. I didn't scramble to fight him. I slowly pushed the chair off my legs. I stood up. I wiped a glob of cranberry sauce from my collar. I looked Marcus dead in the eye. "Merry Christmas, Marcus," I said. My voice was terrifyingly calm. I turned to my mother. "Enjoy the meal, Mom." I walked out. I didn't look back. I heard Brittany laughing as she sat in the chair. I heard Uncle Ted say, "Man, that's going on TikTok." I walked out to my old sedan. I sat in the driver's seat. I looked at the Rolls-Royce. I looked at the Lamborghini. They thought they had won. They thought they had just put the poor, useless stepson in his place. They didn't know that in the trunk of my car, inside my laptop bag, I had the nuclear launch codes to their entire existence. I started my engine. I didn't go home to cry. I went home to work. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. It was a 40-minute drive from the estate to the cramped one-bedroom apartment I rented in the city, but my mind was traveling back 10 years. To understand why tonight happened, you have to understand the history. You have to understand who my father was and who Marcus pretended to be. My dad, David, was a logistics genius. He started the company with one truck and built it into a regional empire. He was a good man. Fair. Tough but fair. He taught me about honor. He taught me that money is a tool, not a character trait. When he died of a sudden heart attack, I was 22. I had just graduated college. I was ready to join him, to learn the ropes. But at the funeral, there was Marcus. He was an old friend of the family, or so he claimed. He was there holding my mother's hand before the casket was even in the ground. He was smooth, charming. He told my mother exactly what she wanted to hear, that she didn't have to worry about anything, that he would handle the burden of the business. Within 6 months, they were married. Within a year, I was pushed out. "You're too inexperienced, Logan," Marcus had told me back then, sitting behind my father's desk. "Go out into the world. Prove yourself. Then come back." I tried. I really did. But every time I tried to access my trust fund for grad school, there was an excuse. Liquidity issues. Market volatility. Tie-ups in assets. Meanwhile, Brittany turned 18. I remember that day clearly. I was driving a beat-up Honda Civic, working 2 jobs to pay for my master's in cybersecurity. I came home for Thanksgiving, and there it was in the driveway. A brand new Porsche 911, white convertible with a red bow. "Daddy got it for me," Brittany squealed. She wasn't even his biological daughter from his first marriage. She was adopted, but he treated her like royalty while treating me like the help. "It's for safety," Marcus had told me, swirling his wine. "German engineering is safer." Safety, right? I swallowed my pride. I took out student loans. I worked nights. I built a career in cybersecurity on my own. I became one of the best forensic data analysts in the state. I learned how to track money. I learned how to find digital footprints that people thought were washed away. And that brings us to last week. I went to visit my Grandma Rose. She's my dad's mom. She's 85, sharp as a tack, and the only person in the family who hates Marcus as much as I do. She lives in a nursing home now because Marcus convinced my mom that Grandma needs professional care, aka he wanted to sell her house. "Logan," she had whispered, pulling me close to her wheelchair. "I have something for you." She pulled a dusty, battered laptop bag from under her bed. "Your father gave this to me 2 weeks before he died," she said. "He told me to keep it safe. He said if anything ever happened to him, and if things looked wrong, I should give it to you, but only when you were ready." I recognized the laptop. It was my dad's old ThinkPad, heavy as a brick. "Why now, Grandma?" I asked. "Because that man," she spat the word, "is selling the South Warehouse. Your father built that warehouse with his own hands. Marcus is stripping the company for parts. Logan. He's killing your father's legacy." I took the laptop home. It was password protected, obviously. But like I said, I work in cybersecurity. It took me 3 hours to bypass the encryption. What I found froze my blood. My father hadn't just died. He had been suspicious. 6 months before his heart attack, Dad had installed a keylogger on the company servers. He suspected someone was cooking the books. He didn't know who. I spent the last week analyzing the data on that hard drive. It was a treasure trove of old emails, digital ledgers, and notes. But the real smoking gun wasn't on the laptop. The laptop was just the map. It gave me the server paths. It gave me the old admin passwords that, knowing Marcus's laziness, probably hadn't been changed in a decade. So, when I sat at that Christmas table tonight, getting mocked for being an IT guy, I wasn't just taking it. I was observing. I noticed Marcus's phone was always face down. I noticed Brittany talking about her investments, which I knew were non-existent. I noticed the way my mother flinched every time money was mentioned. The push, the physical shove onto the floor, that was just the catalyst. When I got back to my apartment after the dinner, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't pour a drink. I sat down at my triple monitor setup. I placed my dad's old ThinkPad on the desk next to my high-powered rig. "Okay, Dad," I whispered. "Let's see what they're really hiding." I pulled up the network scans I had run earlier in the week. I connected to the company's VPN using the legacy admin credentials I found in my dad's notes. Username: Founder01. Password: Rosebud 1985. It worked. Access granted. I was in, and what I saw made the Porsche 911 look like pocket change. Marcus wasn't just spending profit. He was leveraging the company into oblivion. He had taken out massive loans against the company's assets, the trucks, the warehouses, the land, to fund his personal lifestyle. The Rolls-Royce Phantom? Leased under the company name as a client transport vehicle. The Lamborghini Huracan? Listed as a promotional asset for a marketing campaign that didn't exist. My mother's jewelry? Charged to the corporate expense account as consulting fees. But that wasn't the worst part. I found a folder named _legal. I opened it. Brittany, the golden child, was a walking disaster. There were wire transfers to names I recognized. Big Tony, Vegas Mike. These weren't business partners. These were loan sharks. Brittany had a gambling problem. A massive one. She was down nearly $500,000 in online poker and sports betting. And Marcus was bailing her out using the company payroll accounts. He was draining the employee's pension fund to pay off his daughter's bookies. My stomach churned. These were men and women who had worked for my father for 20 years. They were going to retire with nothing because Brittany needed to play blackjack and drive a Lambo. Then I found the Holy Grail. It was a PDF file in a hidden directory. last_will_and_testament_final_sign.pdf. I opened it. I read it. And then I read it again. My breath caught in my throat. The will my mother and Marcus had shown me 10 years ago was a fake. Or rather, it was an older version. This one, dated 3 days before Dad died, had a specific clause. Clause 14b, the inheritance trigger. In the event of my death, the controlling interest, 51%, of the company stock is to be held in trust for my son, Logan, until his 32nd birthday. However, should the company's valuation drop by more than 20% due to mismanagement, or should the executor, Eleanor/Marcus, use company funds for personal assets exceeding $50,000, the trust is immediately dissolved and full ownership and control revert instantly to Logan. I looked at the calendar on my wall. Today was December 25th. My birthday is December 26th. Tomorrow. But the mismanagement clause? That was active right now. Marcus pushing me onto the floor was bad. But stealing my inheritance, stealing my employees' pensions, and desecrating my father's name? That was war. It was 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve. While the rest of the world was waiting for Santa, I was preparing to play the Grim Reaper. I had the evidence. I had the access. Now I needed the execution. I cracked my knuckles and started typing. The anger I felt earlier had crystallized into a cold, hard focus. This is what I do. I find vulnerabilities and I exploit them. But usually I do it to help companies patch their holes. Tonight I was tearing one down to save it. First, I needed to secure the assets. I logged into the company's banking portal. Marcus had been sloppy. He used the same password for the bank as he did for his email. Money King 1. Pathetic cybersecurity hygiene. I saw the balance. It was dangerously low, but there was still enough to save the operations if I stopped the bleeding immediately. I initiated a security freeze on all corporate credit cards. The card in Marcus's wallet? Declined. The card attached to Brittany's Uber Eats account? Declined. The card my mother used for her weekly spa treatments? Declined. Next, the cars. I dug into the leasing contracts for the Rolls-Royce and the Lamborghini. The contracts were clear, commercial use only. I drafted an automated email to the leasing company's fraud department. I attached the GPS logs from the cars. Yes, modern luxury cars track everywhere you go. Log entry. The Lamborghini was parked at a casino for 12 hours last Tuesday. Log entry. The Rolls-Royce was parked at a country club every Friday. Not exactly client transport or marketing. I flagged them for immediate repossession due to contract violation and fraudulent application. Then came the big guns. The IRS. Marcus had been classifying his personal spending as business expenses to avoid taxes. That's tax evasion. It's a federal crime. I compiled a neat, organized dossier. Exhibit A, tuition payments for Brittany's fashion school, listed as employee training. Exhibit B, the family trip to the Maldives, listed as overseas business development. Exhibit C, the renovation of the master bathroom, listed as office headquarters upgrade. I didn't send it to a generic inbox. I dug up the contact info for the regional director of the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I drafted the email. Subject line, whistleblower report, massive tax fraud and pension embezzlement at Sterling Logistics. I set the email to schedule send. 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now for the coup de grace. The lawyers. I found the contact for Mr. Mitchell, my father's old lawyer. He was the one who drafted the real will. I realized Marcus must have fired him immediately after Dad died and buried the paperwork. I wrote an email to Mr. Mitchell, attaching the digital copy of the will I found and the evidence of the trigger event, the 40% drop in company value and the embezzlement. Dear Mr. Mitchell, I found Dad's laptop. I know about Clause 14b. I have evidence of the triggering conditions. I am claiming my company. Please prepare the injunction for Monday morning. But I wasn't done yet. I needed to hit them where it hurt immediately. I needed to disrupt their perfect Christmas morning. I went back to the B_legal folder. Brittany's gambling debts. I found a string of threatening emails from Big Tony. Pay up by the 26th or we take the car. I smiled. I opened a burner email account and sent a message to the email address associated with Big Tony. Subject, repo opportunity. Body, the Lamborghini Huracan is parked at address. The keys are usually left on the hallway table near the front door. The gate code is 1225. Come and get it before the bank does. It was petty. I admit it. But after she pushed me, after she laughed, she didn't deserve that car. Finally, I turned my attention to the company-wide email system. Marcus liked to send out a Christmas message to all employees every year. Usually a generic video of him sitting by the fire holding a brandy snifter, talking about sacrifice while he cut their bonuses. I intercepted the scheduled email. I didn't delete it. I edited it. I replaced his video file with a PDF attachment. The PDF contained the ledger of the pension fund withdrawals Marcus had made to pay for his personal debts. Subject, the truth about your bonuses. I set that to send at 9 a.m. I leaned back in my chair. My coffee had gone cold. My eyes were burning. I looked at the picture of my dad on my desk. He was standing in front of his first truck, grinning, grease on his face. He looked tired but proud. I got you, Dad, I whispered. I'm taking it back. It was 4 a.m. I had done everything I could from a keyboard. The digital traps were set. The mines were armed. All I had to do now was wait for the sun to come up. I crawled into my bed, but I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the push over and over. This seat is for my real daughter. Enjoy the seat, Brittany, I thought, because it's the last comfortable thing you're going to sit on for a long time. I finally drifted off around 5 a.m. I slept for exactly 4 hours. When I woke up at 9 a.m., my phone wasn't just ringing. It was vibrating so hard it was about to fall off the nightstand. I reached over, groggy, and squinted at the screen. 47 missed calls. Caller ID. Marcus? Stepdad? Caller ID. Mom caller ID. Brittany and a string of text messages that were coming in so fast I couldn't read them all. Marcus. What did you do? Mom. Logan, answer the phone. The police are here. Brittany. You ruined my life, you loser. I sat up. I stretched. My hip was stiff from the fall. But my spirit felt lighter than air. I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen, started a fresh pot of coffee, and turned on the local news. I poured my coffee, black, no sugar. I sat down at my computer again, but this time, not to code, to watch. I pulled up the security camera feed from the estate. I still had the backdoor access. The scene on my monitor was chaotic art. In the driveway, 2 massive tow trucks were blocking the exit. One was hoisting the black Rolls-Royce Phantom into the air. I could see Marcus running out of the front door in his silk pajamas, waving his arms frantically. He looked like a penguin trying to stop a tank. The tow truck driver didn't even look at him. He just kept working the hydraulics. On the other side of the driveway, a flatbed truck was already loaded. The yellow Lamborghini was strapped down tight. Brittany was screaming at the driver, actually hitting the truck with her handbag. "That's my car. You can't take it." I could almost hear her shriek through the silent video feed. But wait, it got better. A black SUV pulled up onto the grass, bypassing the blocked driveway. 2 men in suits got out. They weren't police. They looked like IRS agents. Or maybe the leasing fraud investigators. They walked right past Marcus, ignoring his shouting, and went to the front door where my mother was standing, looking pale as a ghost. They handed her a stack of papers. She dropped them. I took a sip of my coffee. My phone buzzed again. It was a voicemail from Marcus. I decided to listen to it on speaker. "Logan, you ungrateful little... I don't know what you did to the bank accounts, but none of my cards are working. I have guests here. I have a reputation. Fix this. Undo whatever hack you pulled or I will call the police on you." I laughed. "Go ahead, Marcus. Call them." I checked the company email server. The email I sent to the employees had been opened 400 times in the last hour. The replies were starting to flood into the general inbox. Employee: "Is this real? Did he really take our pension money?" Employee: "I'm calling my lawyer." Employee: "I've worked here for 15 years. If this is true, I'm burning the place down." The mutiny had begun. I checked social media. Remember Uncle Ted? The one who filmed me getting pushed? Well, irony is a funny thing. Someone, maybe a younger cousin who was at the party, had posted Ted's video on TikTok. But they didn't caption it "Funny Stepson Falls." They captioned it "Rich CEO Assaults Stepson After Stealing His Inheritance." #EatTheRich, #karma. It had 500,000 views overnight. The comments were brutal. "Look at that smug face. That poor guy just walked away with dignity. Wait, isn't that Marcus Sterling? My dad works for him. He cut benefits last month." The Internet Detective Agency was already at work. They had found the company. They had found Brittany's Instagram where she flexed the car she didn't pay for. They were tearing them apart. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Marcus. It was Mr. Mitchell, the lawyer. I answered. "Logan?" His voice was grave, but there was a hint of excitement. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Mitchell. I got your email," he said. "My God, Logan. Is this authentic? The ledger. Every bit of it. #verified and timestamped." "I've already called the judge for an emergency injunction," Mitchell said. "Given the evidence of imminent asset dissipation, the gambling debts, the fraud, we have grounds to freeze everything immediately. The police are also interested in the pension theft. That's criminal, Logan." "I know," I said. "I need you to come to the estate," Mitchell said. "I'm meeting the authorities there in an hour. We need to execute the transition of power. If the clause is valid, and it looks like it is, you are the legal owner of the house and the majority shareholder of the company as of right now." "I'll be there," I said. I hung up. I went to my closet. I didn't put on my hoodie. I put on my best suit. It was a charcoal gray suit I bought for job interviews. I put on a crisp white shirt. I tied my tie perfectly. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see the scared kid who got pushed anymore. I saw my father's son. I walked out to my old sedan. Started with a cough and a sputter, but it started. The drive back to the estate felt different this time. The air felt cleaner. As I turned onto the main road leading to the house, I saw a news van. Then another. The viral video had attracted the vultures. I pulled up to the gate. It was open. The tow trucks were gone, taking the false idols with them. But now there were 2 police cruisers. I parked my sedan right in the middle of the driveway, exactly where the Rolls-Royce had been. I stepped out. I buttoned my jacket. The front door opened. Marcus came out. He looked disheveled. His velvet jacket was wrinkled. He was holding a glass of scotch at 10:30 in the morning. He saw me. "You," he seethed, pointing a shaking finger. "You did this. I'm going to ruin you. I'm going to sue you for corporate espionage. I'll bury you." I didn't stop walking. I walked right up to the steps. "You can't sue me, Marcus," I said calmly. "And why is that?" he screamed. "I am the CEO. I am the legal guardian of this estate." A black sedan pulled up behind me. Mr. Mitchell stepped out, followed by a woman in a windbreaker that said FBI on the back. Marcus's face went from red to white in a split second. "Because Marcus," I said, stepping onto the porch so I was looking down at him, "you're not the CEO, and this isn't your house." The silence that followed was heavy, but this time, it wasn't the silence of my humiliation. It was the silence of judgment. Marcus stared at the FBI agent. He dropped his glass. It shattered on the stone steps, the scotch splashing onto his expensive Italian loafers. "What is this?" Marcus stammered, his voice losing all its boom. "Eleanor, call the lawyer. Call Richard." My mother appeared in the doorway behind him. She looked aged 10 years since last night. Her makeup was smeared. She was clutching her pearls like they were a lifeline. "I called him Marcus," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Richard said he can't help us. He said he's resigning as the company counsel." "Resigning?" Marcus yelled. "He can't resign. I pay him." "Actually," I interrupted, my voice cutting through the panic, "the company pays him. And since the company is now under new management, he realized representing you would be a conflict of interest." Marcus whipped his head around to face me. "New management? What are you talking about? You're a glorified help desk tech." Mr. Mitchell stepped forward, holding a leather portfolio. "Mr. Sterling? Or should I address you by your birth name, Franklin Morris?" That was the second bomb drop. My mother gasped. "Franklin? Who is Franklin?" I looked at her. "He didn't tell you, Mom? Your husband isn't a Sterling. There is no Sterling family line in Connecticut. He's Franklin Morris from Ohio. He has 2 prior convictions for insurance fraud and 1 for Ponzi scheme orchestration. He changed his name 20 years ago." "Lies!" Marcus Franklin screamed. "Slander! I'll sue you all." "It's in the background check, Marcus," I said. "You know, the one you never let Dad run? But I ran it last night." The FBI agent, Special Agent Chun, stepped forward. She was small but terrifying. "Franklin Morris, we have a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement of pension funds across state lines." Marcus took a step back. No, this is a misunderstanding. I can explain. The funds were borrowed for investment." "Gambling isn't investing, Dad." Brittany's voice came from the hallway. She walked out. She looked wrecked, mascara running down her face, still wearing the pajamas she slept in. "You told me the accounts were endless," she screamed at him. "You told me the company was a piggy bank. Now Big Tony is texting me saying he's going to break my legs if I don't pay the 50 grand vigorish by noon." "Shut up, Brittany," Marcus roared. "No, you shut up," she shrieked. "They took my car. They locked my credit cards. I have nothing." "You never had anything, Brittany," I said. "It was all stolen money. My father's money." I walked past Marcus, up the steps, and stood right in front of the door. "Mr. Mitchell," I said, "please read the clause." Mr. Mitchell opened the portfolio. According to the last will and testament of David Cunningham, specifically Clause 14b, the moment company valuation dropped by 20% due to malfeasance, the trust holding the assets for Logan Cunningham was dissolved. As of 9 a.m. this morning, verified by the bank and the board of directors, Logan Cunningham is the sole owner of the estate and the majority shareholder of DC Logistics. I looked at Marcus. You're trespassing. Marcus looked like he was having a stroke. His eyes bulged. He looked at my mother. Eleanor, do something. Tell them. This is our house. My mother looked at me. Her eyes were pleading. Logan, honey, please, let's talk about this inside. We're family. Family? I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Family? Last night, when he pushed me when I was on the floor covered in food. Were we family then? When you told me not to embarrass you, were we family then? I was scared, she sobbed. He has a temper. You weren't scared, Mom, I said, my voice breaking slightly but staying strong. You were comfortable. You liked the Porsche. You liked the country club. You sold me out for a lifestyle. I turned back to Marcus. The FBI agent was taking out handcuffs. Remember what you said to me last night, Marcus? I asked softly. He stared at me, defeated. You said, this seat is for my real daughter. Get out. I leaned in close. Well, this house is for the real son. Get out. Agent Chun spun Marcus around. Franklin Morris, you have the right to remain silent. As they clicked the cuffs on him, he started crying. Not a dignified cry. Pathetic, wailing cry. My back. Be careful with my back. I have a condition. They walked him down the steps past me. He looked at me one last time. I raised you, he spat. No, I said. You robbed me, and you failed. They put him in the back of the cruiser. Brittany was sitting on the porch swing, sobbing into her hands. What am I going to do? I can't work. I don't know how to do anything. I hear Starbucks is hiring, I said. They offer tuition reimbursement. Maybe you can finally go to that fashion school for real. She looked up at me with pure hatred, but she didn't say a word. She knew her leverage was gone. Then there was just my mother, standing in the doorway of the house she thought she owned. Logan, she said, reaching out a hand. Thank God you saved the company. Your father would be so proud. We can fix this. We can redecorate. Get that awful man's smell out of here. She was already pivoting, already trying to align herself with the winner. It was sickening. We? I asked. Yes, honey. You and me. We're the only ones left. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me, but who hadn't been a mother to me in 10 years. Mr. Mitchell, I said, what is the timeline for eviction? My mother's face dropped. Eviction? Logan, I'm your mother. You were his accomplice, Mom, I said. You signed the tax returns. I saw your signature. You signed the loan documents for the Rolls-Royce. You knew. I didn't read them. I just signed what he gave me. Ignorance isn't a defense in court, and it's not a defense with me, I said. You watched him steal my father's legacy and you spent the money. You watched him humiliate me for a decade and you looked away. I have nowhere to go, she whispered. You have the condo in Florida, I said. The one Dad bought before he met you. That's in your name. It wasn't part of the company assets. It's small, but it's a roof. Florida? She gasped. But my friends. My life is here. Your life here was a lie, I said. You have until tomorrow to pack your personal belongings. Anything bought with company funds stays. The jewelry, the furs, the art. It stays. You can't do this, she cried. I'm your mother. And he was my father, I said, pointing to the sky. And you let that man piss on his grave. I turned around and walked down the steps to shake Agent Chen's hand. Thank you, Agent Chen, I said. Good work on the forensic accounting, Logan, she said, offering a rare smile. You made our job easy. We've been trying to pin Morris for years. We just needed the paper trail. Glad I could help. I watched as the police cars drove away with Marcus. I watched Brittany call an Uber because her car was gone. I watched my mother retreat into the house to start packing, weeping loudly. I stood in the driveway alone. The winter air was crisp. For the first time in 10 years, the air didn't feel heavy. Felt like possibility. The next few months were a blur of legal battles, but they were battles I was winning. Franklin, was denied bail. Turns out, when you have 3 identities and offshore accounts, which I also found and handed over, you're a flight risk. He pleaded guilty to avoid a 30-year sentence. He got 15 years. He'll be 73 when he gets out. Brittany avoided jail time by turning state's witness against her father. She testified about the gambling money and how he instructed her to hide it. In exchange, she got 5 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. Last I heard, she's working as a receptionist at a dental office. She takes the bus. She had to sell all her designer clothes to pay off the gambling debts to Big Tony, so she wouldn't get her legs broken. Welcome to the real world, Brittany. My mother moved to Florida. We don't talk much. She sends me cards on holidays. I don't open them. Maybe one day I will forgive her. Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. She lost the right to be in my life when she chose a predator over her son. As for me, I moved into the estate, but I didn't keep it as a museum. I brought Grandma Rose home. I hired a full-time nurse for her, and she spends her days in the sunroom, overlooking the garden my dad planted. She smiles a lot more now. I took over as CEO of DC Logistics. It wasn't easy. The company was on the brink of collapse. I had to sell the Rolls-Royce, obviously, the vacation homes, and trim a lot of fat. But I kept the employees. I restored their pension fund using the money we recovered from Marcus's seized assets. I drove my old sedan for another 6 months until the company was in the black. Then, and only then, did I buy myself a new car. Not a Lamborghini. Not a Ferrari. I bought a restored 1969 Ford Mustang. The exact car my dad always wanted but never bought for himself because he was too busy building the business for us. Every morning, when I drive into the company parking lot, I park in the spot marked CEO. But I don't feel like a boss. I feel like a guardian. The night of the Christmas party, when Marcus pushed me, he thought he was displaying his power. He thought he was showing everyone who was king. But all he did was push me into the one place I needed to be, back into the fight. He forgot the most important rule of nature. You can kick a dog and it might run, but if you corner a wolf, it will tear your throat out. I kept the chair, by the way, the one at the dining table, the one he pushed me out of. I sit in it every night for dinner. It's my seat, and nobody tells me to move. Taking back the company was the easy part. Fix it? That was a nightmare. You see, in movies, the hero wins the court case, walks into the office, and the credits roll. Everyone assumes they live happily ever after. But in real life, when you inherit a company that's been run by a narcissist and a gambler for 10 years, you don't inherit a kingdom. You inherit a crime scene. The first 3 months were grueling. I practically lived in my office. I replaced the expensive Italian marble desk Marcus had installed with my father's old oak desk, which I found gathering dust in the basement of the warehouse. The culture of the company was toxic. Marcus had hired yes men, people who were paid to agree with him and ignore the red flags. I had to fire half of middle management in the first week. It wasn't fun. These were people with families. But they were also people who had watched Marcus drain the pension fund and said nothing because they were getting bonuses. I called an all-hands meeting in the warehouse. No suits, no catering, just me, standing on a shipping crate, looking at 200 scared, angry faces. I'm not Marcus, I told them. I don't care about the stock price today. I care about whether this company exists in 10 years. I'm cutting my own salary to $1 until the pension fund is fully restored. If you're willing to work, I'm willing to fight for you. If you're here for a free ride, the door is open. It was quiet. Then, a slow clap started from the back. It was Old Man Miller, the fleet manager who had taught me to drive a forklift when I was 16. We got to work, but the ghosts of the past weren't done with me yet. About 6 months in, I was renovating the master bedroom at the estate. I couldn't sleep in there. It still smelled like Marcus's cologne and my mother's desperation. I decided to strip it down to the studs. I was swinging a sledgehammer, taking down a false wall in the walk-in closet, when I hit something metal. It wasn't a pipe. It was a safe. It wasn't on any of the blueprints. It wasn't in the asset logs I had seized. I called Agent Chen. She came over within the hour, bringing a forensics kit. We spent 20 minutes cracking it. I expected to find cash. Maybe gold bars. Maybe more blackmail material on Brittany. What we found was far more disturbing. Inside were 3 leather-bound notebooks and a stack of photos. I put on gloves and opened the first notebook. It was a ledger, but not for money. It was a ledger of women. Target 1, Susan. Widow. Insurance payout, $500,000. Status, depleted. Target 2, Margaret. Divorcee. Alimony, $1.2 million. Status, depleted. Target 3, Eleanor. Widow. Company value, $15 million. Status, in progress. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just greed. This was a profession. Marcus Franklin had been doing this for 30 years. He had a system. He targeted vulnerable women, isolated them from their families, drained their assets, and moved on. But then I saw the photos. They were photos of me. Photos of me at my college graduation. Photos of me walking into my first apartment. Photos of me buying my beat-up sedan. There were notes scribbled on the back. Subject is resilient. Attempted isolation failed. Keep distance. Do not engage unless necessary. He had been watching me. For 10 years. He knew I was a threat. The reason he pushed me away, the reason he treated me like garbage, wasn't just because he was a jerk. It was a calculated strategy. He needed to break my self-esteem so I wouldn't have the confidence to look into the books. He didn't push me at Christmas because he lost his temper. He pushed me because he was terrified of me. I showed Agent Chen. She went pale. This changes things, Logan. This proves premeditation. We can add stalking and predatory conspiracy to the charges. This ensures he never sees the light of day. I felt a cold chill, but then, a strange warmth. For a decade I thought I was the loser. I thought I was the unwanted stepchild who couldn't measure up to his standards. But the truth was, I was the only thing he feared. I was the variable he couldn't control. That night, I sat on the porch of the estate. Grandma Rose was asleep inside. The house was quiet. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Usually I don't answer, but something told me to pick up. Hello, Logan. The voice was small, broken. It was Brittany. I hadn't spoken to her since the arrest. What do you want, Brittany? I asked, my voice flat. I just wanted to say. She paused, and I heard a lighter flicking. She was smoking. I wanted to say that Mom is sick. I stiffened. What? She's in the hospital in Boca, Brittany said. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Broken heart syndrome, basically. I didn't say anything. She's asking for you, Brittany said. She wants to see you. I looked out at the driveway. I looked at the spot where the Rolls-Royce used to be. I thought about the ledger. Target 3, Eleanor. Is she going to be okay? I asked. Doctors say she'll recover, but she's depressed. She keeps saying she's sorry. I closed my eyes. This was the moment. The movie moment where the hero flies to the hospital, forgives the repentant mother, and they cry and hug. But this isn't a movie. This is my life. I'm glad she's going to be physically okay, I said. But I'm not coming, Brittany. What? You're heartless. Brittany snapped, her old self flaring up for a second. She's your mother. She is, I agreed. And for 10 years, she watched a man destroy me. She signed papers that stole my future. And even now, she's only sorry because the money is gone. If Marcus was still here, and the money was still flowing, she wouldn't be calling me. Brittany was silent. And Brittany, I added, that ledger I found? You were in it too. What? He had a file on you. Useful idiot. Keep dependent. Use debt to control. He didn't love you either. He just knew you were easier to manipulate than I was. I heard a gasp on the other end. Get out of that cycle, Brittany, I said. Don't be like Mom. Get a job. Pay your own rent. Be a real person. Goodbye. I hung up. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. I had finally severed the last cord of the parachute that had been dragging behind me, slowing me down. I went back inside. I walked into the kitchen. Sarah, Agent Chun, was there. She wasn't wearing her FBI windbreaker. She was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, making tea. We had started seeing each other a few months ago. It started as professional debriefings, then coffee, then dinner. It was slow. It was normal. It was everything I never had in that house. Who was that? She asked, handing me a mug. Nobody, I said, taking the tea. Just a wrong number. She looked at me, her sharp eyes analyzing everything. She knew. She nodded. The safe is empty now, she said. We took everything into evidence. Good, I said. I'm turning that closet into a server room. She laughed. You nerd. Hey, servers don't lie to you. I smiled. That year was the hardest of my life. I worked 18-hour days. I fought lawsuits from Marcus's old creditors. I reassured clients who wanted to leave. I rebuilt the brand from the ground up, focusing on integrity and transparency. And slowly, the numbers turned green. Not because of a scam, but because of work. Honest work. By the time November rolled around, the company stock was higher than it had been when my dad died. We had hired back 50 employees. We gave out Christmas bonuses early. I was sitting in my office, Dad's office, looking at the quarterly report when I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had fueled me, the nuclear code's energy, the desire for revenge, it was gone. It had burned itself out, and in its place was something solid. Something permanent. I had built a life. Not a life defined by being a victim, but a life defined by what I created. Marcus was in a cell. Brittany was working. Mom was in Florida. And I was here. Christmas Eve, 1 year later. The snow was falling softly outside, coating the long driveway in a pristine white blanket. But this time, there were no tire tracks from a Rolls-Royce or a Lamborghini marring the surface. Parked in the driveway were sensible cars. SUVs, sedans, trucks. The cars of real people. And right in the center, gleaming under the porch lights, was my 1969 Ford Mustang, cherry red, a tribute to the dream my father deferred. I walked through the front door. The smell hit me instantly, but it wasn't the cloying scent of expensive pine candles and stale scotch. It was the smell of cinnamon, roasting turkey, and fresh bread. Real food. The house was full, but not with strangers in tuxedos trying to network. Grandma Rose was in her wheelchair by the fireplace, wearing a ridiculous reindeer sweater, telling a story to Sarah. Sarah was laughing, her hand resting gently on my arm as I walked up. And then David, that's Logan's dad, he tried to fix the plumbing himself and flooded the whole basement. Grandma cackled. I inherited his coding skills, not his plumbing skills, Grandma, I said, kissing her on the cheek. Also in the room were Mr. Mitchell, the lawyer who had helped me reclaim my life, Old Man Miller from the warehouse, and a few of my closest friends from my cybersecurity days. People who had known me when I was broke and eating ramen. Dinner is served, Sarah announced. We moved to the dining room. The long mahogany table was set, but the crystal flutes were gone, replaced by sturdy glassware. The tiny, pretentious portions of food were replaced by massive bowls of mashed potatoes, stuffing, and a turkey that looked like it could feed an army. I walked to the head of the table. For a split second, a memory flashed in my mind. The memory of Marcus sitting there. The velvet jacket. The sneer. This seat is for my real daughter. The shove. The cranberry sauce on my shirt. The humiliation. Felt like a lifetime ago. Like a scene from a movie I watched once. Not something I lived. I put my hand on the back of the chair. It was the same chair. I hadn't replaced it. I wanted the reminder. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at me, not with judgment, but with expectation. With respect. Speech. Old Man Miller grunted, holding up a beer. I looked around the table. A year ago, I started, my voice thick with emotion. I stood in this room and I was told I didn't belong. I was told I wasn't family. I was pushed down, literally and metaphorically. I looked at Sarah, then at Grandma Rose. But gravity is a funny thing, I continued. You can only push something down for so long before the pressure builds up. And when it bounces back, it hits hard. There was a murmur of agreement. I learned a lot this year, I said. I learned that blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty makes you family. Love makes you family. Shared values make you family. I raised my glass. To the people who were there when the bank accounts were frozen. To the people who stayed when the ship was sinking. And to my dad, who left me the map to find my way back home. To David, Grandma Rose cheered. To Logan, Sarah added. We sat down. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table. I sat down. It was comfortable, fit perfectly. We ate, we laughed. Uncle Ted wasn't there to film it for TikTok. Nobody was on their phone. We were just present. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out instinctively. A notification from the prison email system. An automated message. Inmate 8940 Morris has requested to add you to his contact list. I looked at the screen. I looked at the accept and deny buttons. Marcus wanted to talk. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to beg. Maybe to try one last manipulation. I looked up at Sarah. She was smiling, passing the gravy to Miller. I looked at Grandma Rose, who was sneaking a piece of turkey to the dog under the table. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the need for closure. I already had closure. I pressed block. I slid the phone back into my pocket. Everything okay? Sarah asked, touching my hand. Yeah. I smiled, taking a bite of the best turkey I had ever tasted. Just spam. The night went on. We played board games. We drank cheap beer and good wine. We didn't talk about stock prices or mergers. We talked about life. As the night wound down, I walked outside to the porch for a breath of fresh air. The snow was stopping. The stars were coming out. I looked up at the sky. Merry Christmas, Dad, I whispered. We made it. I turned back to the window. I could see them all inside, warm and safe. My mother chose a seat at a table where she had to beg for scraps of affection. Brittany chose a seat that was bought with stolen money. Marcus tried to steal a seat that he never earned. Me? I built my own table. And that's the secret. If they don't give you a seat at the table, don't just flip it over. Build a better one. Build a stronger one. And invite the people who actually give a damn about you to sit down. Because in the end, the view from the head of the table isn't about the power. It's about the people looking back at you. I took one last look at the cold, empty driveway where the Lamborghini used to be, turned my back on the ghosts, and walked back inside to my real life. Wow, just writing that out brings it all back. It's been a crazy journey, guys. But looking back, I realized this wasn't just about a bad Christmas dinner. It was about reclaiming my self-worth. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: document everything. If you feel something is wrong in your gut, whether it's in your family business, your relationship, or your workplace, trust that instinct. Narcissists thrive in the shadows. They rely on you being too polite to ask for receipts. Don't be polite. Be professional. Secondly, financial independence is your shield. They controlled me because they controlled the money. The moment I had my own skills, my cybersecurity career, I had leverage. Never let anyone hold the purse strings of your entire existence. And finally, toxic loyalty is just slavery with a better name. Just because someone is family doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Walking away from my mother was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was the only way to save myself. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from a family member to save your own mental health? Or maybe you've had a justice moment where you finally stood up to a bully. Type good in the comments if you enjoyed this journey and agree that self-respect is worth more than any inheritance. Or share your own story of overcoming a toxic situation. I read every single comment. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and remember, build your own table.